Our White House reporter, Jake Traylor in Washington, and retired Navy Vice Admiral Robert Harwood. So, Jake, talk to us about this decision now by the president to back off his threat for now.
Yeah, Anna, look, I mean, first it was 48 hours, then that got extended, then it was 5 days. Now, as of yesterday, the president is saying it's going to be 10 days. It's certainly worth noting that that comes as Wall Street saw one of, actually, its worst drop since the Iranian war began. And the president is defending his decision to extend it by saying that talks right now with Iran are going very well. That's in juxtaposition to, at the exact same time, we are seeing Iranian regime officials say that they by no means are negotiating this 15-point peace plan that was initially proposed by the United States. Trump went on Fox News shortly after the announcement on Truth Social yesterday, trying to defend his decision, saying that Iran initially asked for a 7-day extension and that he was willing to give them a 10-day extension. Anna, we have to note the pattern here. Democrats often refer to this as taco. Trump always chickens out. The White House defends it as strategy, but frequently now with Iran, but also with tariffs and multiple other examples, the president has consistently set a really hard deadline and then extended it over time. Very likely in this case, though the president and the White House won't say this, he certainly is tracking the markets, oil prices, and what happened at the stock market yesterday, and is in real time trying to adjust as they also seek an off-ramp in this.
Welcome to Dr. John exclusive podcast. So what just happened the moment Trump spent years trying to prevent just arrived? The evidence is out, the documents are public, and the lies are exposed. Let me paint you a picture of what is unfolding right now. The Justice Department just dropped a bomb on American politics. Not a small bomb, not a firecracker. We are talking about millions of pages of court documents, federal records, and investigative files that have been locked away for years.
Irrelevant. That is why they say they were successful in killing that Iranian naval commander yesterday, and they hope to have similar victories in the days to come. At the same time, Iran has in no way slowed down in its targeting of Israel. We've seen many barrages of ballistic missiles from Iran targeting different parts of Israel over the course of the last couple of days. Similarly, the war against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon has not calmed down at all. The IDF told me yesterday that their positions inside of Lebanese territory are at this point defensive, but very much left open the possibility that they might become offensive. I've mentioned a couple times now to you, Anna, that we should be paying attention to whether Israel pushes further into Lebanon and tries to hold territory there in any kind of prolonged, protracted way, because that will complicate.
Finally seeing the light of day. And when journalists, researchers, and legal experts started digging through this mountain of evidence, they found something that is sending shockwaves through Washington. Trump's name appears more than 1,000 times. Over 1,000 separate mentions in these files. That is not a footnote. That is not someone who happened to be in the same room as Jeffrey Epstein once or twice. That is a pattern.
Any kind of future diplomatic negotiation. You know, as much as the Israelis want to say that the military campaign and the diplomatic negotiations are separate, they in fact are not. Because one of the demands that Iran has conveyed to the United States is that they want hostilities to cease not just in Iran but also in Lebanon against Hezbollah and against any other of Iran's proxies. Last thing I'll point out, Anna, is that there's some recent reporting from Reuters citing anonymous U.S. officials, intelligence officials, saying that they can only confirm that about a third of Iran's ballistic missiles have in fact been destroyed. If that is true, it's reminiscent of what happened last year in June after what's called the June War here, which was led by Israel, but with participation from the United States, in which both countries claimed that they had successfully obliterated Iran's nuclear program, only to, at the beginning of this war, say that there was, in fact, a nuclear program there left to be obliterated. So there's a pattern of both Israel and the United States overstating the extent of their military achievements and then going on to sort of walk that back to justify further military action, Anna.
That is a connection that Trump has spent years denying, years lying about, years trying to bury under a mountain of deflection and falsehoods. And here is where it gets devastating for Trump. For years, he has stood in front of cameras, looked straight into the lens, and told the American people with absolute certainty that he was never on Epstein's plane. He said it with that signature Trump confidence. He said he barely knew the guy. He said their relationship was minimal. He said it over and over again.
And Admiral, as we mentioned, the Journal is now reporting the Pentagon's considering sending another 10,000 troops to the Middle East. These would be potential boots on the ground. That's on top of the thousands of Marines, the paratroopers that have already deployed in the past week. Is it possible this new 10-day deadline extension is just stalling until these troops arrive?
Well, I think it's like everything the president's done. He's confused everyone, and that can be a successful strategy in itself while he weighs his options and positions for those options. It's funny, I've been here in Europe for the last week. I've been in several major capitals, and they all understand the Iranians.
Hammering the point home so that anyone who questioned him would feel foolish for even asking. But the documents tell a completely different story. The federal records show Trump flew on Epstein's private jet multiple times during the 1990s. Multiple flights, multiple occasions, different trips, different dates, all documented in black and white. And this is not speculation. This is not some anonymous source leaking rumors. This is official government documentation.
Threat and are in full support of the U.S. activities. In fact, you can see it on the ground of several of these capitals. So again, I think the administration is trying to keep our adversaries on their toes and weigh the options considering what the current state of play is. And the priorities remain moving ships through the Strait of Hormuz and eradicating the missile threat. And if ground troops can help with that, not just by going on the ground, but conducting maritime interception operations, seizing Iranian oil like they did to Venezuela, those are all options that they can pursue and execute.
And the White House saying that the movement of troops is in order to keep all options open for the president. The president did say Iran gave the U.S. a gift by letting 10 Pakistan-linked ships through the strait. Here was that moment during his cabinet meeting yesterday.
This is material that federal prosecutors assembled, that FBI investigators compiled, that is now sitting in the public domain for anyone to see. So you have to ask yourself a simple question. If Trump was never on the plane, why do the records say otherwise? If Trump barely knew Epstein, why are there over 1,000 mentions of his name in these files? If Trump has been telling the truth all these years, why is the evidence contradicting him so directly, so clearly, so undeniably? Now, let me be fair here. When these documents dropped, the Justice Department did put out a statement saying that some of the claims in these files are untrue and sensationalist. They acknowledged that there were tips from informants that investigators later determined were unreliable. They said not everything in those 3.5 million pages is accurate, and that context matters. But here is the part that Trump does not want you to focus on. The plane rides are not in that category. The plane rides are not the unsubstantiated claims. The plane rides are not the informant tips that turn out to be false. The plane rides are documented facts. They are verifiable. They are sitting right there in the federal records. So when Trump tries to hide behind that DOJ statement, when he tries to say, see, even the government says some of this is false, he is conveniently leaving out the fact that the core evidence against him is the part that is actually true. This is not complicated. Trump said he was never on the plane. The documents say he was on the plane multiple times. One of those statements is a lie, and we now know which one. But this story goes even deeper than the plane rides, because buried in these files is something else that should make every American pay attention. There is evidence that federal prosecutors issued a subpoena for Trump's Mar-a-Lago property ahead of Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. Think about what that means. Prosecutors investigating Epstein's criminal network thought there might be evidence at Trump's private club. They thought Mar-a-Lago was relevant enough to the case that they needed to demand records from that location. Now, did they end up charging Trump? No. Was he indicted in connection with the Epstein case? No. But the fact that prosecutors were looking there, the fact that they thought there might be something worth finding, that is significant. That tells us that law enforcement was taking Trump's connection to Epstein seriously. That tells us that investigators believe there was enough there to warrant a closer look. And that feeds directly into the narrative Trump has been trying to avoid for his entire political career. The narrative that he was much closer to Epstein than he has ever admitted. The narrative that there are things about that relationship he does not want the public to know. And if you think this is all just about Epstein, you are missing the bigger picture. Because at the exact same time these Epstein files are being released, something else is happening that is compounding the damage. Sealed court records from the classified documents case against Trump are also surfacing, and what they reveal is staggering. A federal judge found there was sufficient evidence that Trump obstructed justice. Sufficient evidence. Those are the words from a member of the federal judiciary. A judge looked at the evidence prosecutors presented and said, yes, there is enough here to believe that Trump tried to interfere with the investigation, that Trump tried to cover things up, that Trump took actions to prevent the truth from coming out. This is not a fringe opinion. This is not a partisan attack. This is a judicial finding. And it allowed prosecutors to bypass attorney-client privilege and gather even more evidence against Trump. So you have two massive stories colliding at the same time. You have the Epstein files showing Trump lied about flying on that plane. You have the documents case showing a judge believes Trump tried to obstruct justice. And together, they paint a picture of a president who is willing to lie, willing to obstruct, willing to do whatever it takes to protect himself. Now let me tell you why this matters in a way that goes beyond the headlines. This is a credibility crisis for Trump. And credibility is not a small thing in politics. Credibility is everything. When a president says something, people need to be able to trust that what he is saying is true. When a president makes promises, people need to believe he will keep them. When a president denies wrongdoing, people need to have confidence that the denial is genuine. But what happens when that trust is broken? What happens when a president has been publicly denying something for years, emphatically, repeatedly, with absolute certainty, and then evidence surfaces that proves he was lying? That does not just damage that one issue. That damages everything. It makes people question every other statement he has ever made. It makes people wonder what else he has been hiding. It creates a shadow of doubt that follows him everywhere. And that is exactly what is happening to Trump right now. He denied the plane rides. The plane rides turn out to be real. So now when Trump says anything, people are going to think twice. When Trump makes a claim, people are going to ask, is that actually true? When Trump denies something, people are going to wonder if the evidence will eventually prove him wrong again. That is a cancer on a presidency. That is the kind of thing that erodes authority, that diminishes leadership, that makes it harder to govern. Think about what this does to Trump's ability to persuade people. A president's power is not just about executive orders and military authority. A president's power comes from his ability to move public opinion, to rally support, to get people to follow his lead. But if people do not believe what he says, that power evaporates. If people think he is a liar, they are not going to listen when he tells them to support his agenda. They are not going to trust him when he says his policies will help them. They are not going to have confidence in his leadership when he makes critical decisions. This is not theoretical. This is political reality. And it is hitting Trump at the worst possible time. Because we are heading into 2026. We are heading into an election year. We are heading into a moment when Trump needs maximum credibility, maximum trust, maximum confidence from the American people. And instead, he is facing a credibility crisis of his own making. Instead of projecting strength and honesty, he is being exposed as someone who lied about his connections to one of the most notorious criminals in modern American history. Now let me walk you through what the political fallout is going to look like, because it is going to be brutal. Democrats are going to take these documents, and they are going to use them relentlessly. They are going to create ads that show Trump saying he was never on the plane, followed by the federal records that prove he was. They are going to run those ads in swing states, in battleground districts, in every place where voters are still making up their minds. They are going to flood social media with clips of Trump lying, juxtaposed with the evidence that exposes the lie. And here's the thing. Trump cannot stop it. He cannot deny it away. He cannot attack the media enough to make people forget what they have seen. Because the documents are public, the evidence is out there. Anyone can go look at them. Anyone can see for themselves that Trump flew on Epstein's plane. Anyone can see that Trump lied about it. So when Trump says it is a witch hunt, when Trump says people are making stuff up, when Trump says the documents are fake, the response is going to be simple. Go read them yourself. That is the problem for Trump. The evidence is not locked away anymore. It is not buried in sealed court files. It is not hidden behind prosecutorial discretion. It is sitting there in plain sight. Millions of pages of federal records. And the most damaging parts are already being pulled out and shared across every platform. And it is not just the plane rides. It is the fact that Trump's name appears over 1,000 times in these files. It is the fact that prosecutors subpoenaed his property. It is the fact that all of this is happening at the same time as a federal judge is saying there is sufficient evidence that Trump obstructed justice in another case. The cumulative effect of all of this is devastating. It creates a narrative that Trump is compromised, that Trump has something to hide, that Trump is willing to break the law to protect himself. Now, let me address something that Trump supporters might be thinking right now. They might be saying, this is all old news. This is all from years ago. This is just the establishment trying to take down Trump again. I understand that perspective. I understand that Trump has trained his base to view any negative story as a political attack. But here's the difference. This is not a story from a news outlet with an agenda. This is not a leak from an anonymous source. This is federal documentation. This is the government's own records. This is evidence that the Justice Department itself released. And more importantly, this is not about what someone said Trump did. This is about what Trump said about himself and what the evidence shows about what he actually did. When you lie about something for years and then the truth comes out, that is not a political attack. That is accountability. That is the truth finally catching up with the lie. So what is Trump going to do about all of this? So far, his response has been exactly what you would expect. He is calling it fake. He is saying it is untrue claims. He is saying people are making stuff up about him. He is saying it is a witch hunt. But here's the problem with that strategy. It does not address the plane rides. It does not address the fact that he flew on Epstein's plane and lied about it. It does not address the credibility issue at the heart of this story. You cannot deflect your way out of documented evidence. You cannot attack your way out of federal records. You cannot claim persecution when the documents are sitting there for everyone to see. Trump's playbook has always been to deny, attack, and move on to the next controversy. But that playbook depends on the absence of concrete evidence. It depends on ambiguity, on he said, she said, on disputed facts. And that is not what we have here. We have clear, documented, verifiable facts. Trump said one thing. The records show another. That is not a debate. That is a contradiction. And that contradiction is going to follow Trump for the rest of his political career. It is going to be brought up in every debate. It is going to be referenced in every opposition ad. It is going to be the first thing reporters ask about every time Trump makes a statement on anything related to ethics, credibility, or honesty. It is going to be a permanent stain on his public image. Now let me talk about the classified documents case for a moment, because that piece of this story is equally damaging. When a federal judge finds sufficient evidence of obstruction of justice, that is not something that just goes away. That finding is now part of the public record. It is something that prosecutors can use. It is something that can be referenced in future legal proceedings. It is something that feeds the narrative that Trump is not just someone who lies about his past, but someone who actively tries to hide evidence and cover up wrongdoing. The fact that this finding is coming out at the same time as the Epstein files makes it even worse for Trump, because it shows a pattern. It shows a willingness to be dishonest, a willingness to obstruct, a willingness to put his own interests above the truth. And that pattern is going to be devastating when voters start making decisions about whether they want to continue supporting him. Think about what this means for the 2026 midterms. Democrats are going to run on this. They're going to say, if you elect Republicans, you are electing people who stand with a president who lied about his connections to Epstein. They're going to say, if you want accountability and honesty in government, you cannot vote for the party that defends a president who obstructed justice. They're going to hammer this message in every competitive district, in every swing state, in every place where the election is going to be close. And Republicans are going to be put in an impossible position. They can either defend Trump, which means defending someone who has been caught lying about Epstein, or they can distance themselves from him, which risks alienating his base. There is no good option for them. There is no way to spin this that makes it go away. The evidence is too clear. The contradiction is too direct. The credibility damage is too severe. Now I want to step back for a moment and talk about why this story matters beyond politics. Because at its core, this is about truth. This is about whether the President of the United States can be trusted to tell the truth. And that is not a partisan issue. That is a fundamental question about the kind of leadership we have in this country. If the president lies about something as significant as his connection to Jeffrey Epstein, if he lies about it for years, if he lies about it emphatically and repeatedly, what does that say about his character? What does that say about his fitness for office? What does that say about the example he is setting for the country? These are not small questions. These are the kinds of questions that voters ask themselves when they go into the voting booth. And right now, the answers to those questions are not good for Trump. The evidence shows he lied. The evidence shows he was connected to Epstein in ways he denied. The evidence shows he tried to obstruct justice in another case. And that evidence is going to be front and center in the minds of voters as we head into 2026. The bottom line is this. The documents are out. The truth is known. Trump said he was never on Epstein's plane. The records show he was. Trump said he barely knew Epstein. The files show his name over 1,000 times. Trump has been denying and deflecting for years. And now the evidence has caught up with him. This is a turning point. This is the moment when the narrative around Trump shifts from he said, they said to he lied, and here is the proof. This is the moment when voters start looking at Trump differently, when the doubt creeps in, when the credibility that is so essential to political power begins to crumble. And Trump cannot undo it. He cannot spin it. He cannot make it go away. The evidence is public. The truth is out there. And the American people are going to see it for themselves. So watch what happens next. Watch how this story evolves. Watch how the media covers it. Watch how Democrats use it. Watch how Republicans react to it. Watch how voters respond to it. Because this is not just another news cycle. This is a defining moment. This is the evidence dropping. This is the truth finally breaking through. And the consequences are going to be felt for years to come. Stay tuned. This story is far from over.